the Mishnah now we're going to try again to prove one way or another. So the Mishnah had said, if you find rounds of figs, rings of figs, rounds of figs, kikaro shel nachtam, or loaves of a baker, harei l'shalo.
For which there are many identical items.
Right.
So you don't have a simon.
No simon, correct. Okay? So here it is. Joe's walking along the street. He finds a ring of figs. What does the Mishnah say? Keep it. Harei l'shalo. You're allowed to keep it. Ask the Gemara, whoop, 1 second over here. Abaye. Why is that? But he doesn't know he lost it. Who is to tell you that he knows that he lost it? And again, according to Abaye, that should not be the halacha. You should be suspicious. Maybe the guy isn't aware of it, that it fell. So what that it doesn't have a simon? But if Yush hasn't actually kicked in yet, because he isn't aware, he has no business taking it. So what do you say to that, Mr. Abaye? Rabbi Abaye. So the Gemara answers, Hasam Nami. There also, Agav Diakiri, along with the fact, or Agav, since Diakiri, that they are Yakiri. Now, the way that it's generally translated, the way Rashi learns, is that they're heavy. They're big and they're heavy. Meida Yoda Behu, he will know of them. Meaning, he will know that it fell. Not because that he's always looking for his money in his pocket, but for a different reason. Something's missing. It's large enough or heavy enough that I would recognize that it's missing. Therefore, there we have a right to presume that Yush has already kicked in. So we have already learned now, already in the Gemara, a few limitations on Abaye. Abaye has told us that generally speaking, we have an obligation to suspect that the guy was not miyayish yet, right? That's called Yerushalamidas. Yerushalamidas. You're not allowed to take something that you find on the street. Maybe the owner was not miyayish yet, and as long as the owner was not miyayish yet, it's not Yush. But says Abaye, based on this Gemara, that's not always so true. There are exceptions to that rule. The first exception we saw was back before it, even with simon, if it's from the tide of a sea or from a flood. But I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about even regular, you're finding something on the street. If it's money, you can keep it. Because a person keeps tabs on his money. And we can assume that the guy will know right away if he lost money.
If a person knows right away he's half a block away, why are we saying that he has Yush?
Because he doesn't know where it fell. He might go back. He might go back and try to find it.
Right.
How is that?
Okay.
So here, this is an important point, which
He's saying he hasn't given up hope. He's going back. He's looking for. He's spending time.
Okay. Well, 1 second. We'll get to that in a minute. Hold that thought for a minute. Okay. The other exception to the rule that Abaye is now telling us, based on our Gemara, is Yakiri. If it's heavy or large, and therefore that too will trigger that a person will know that it fell from him, and then it's miyayish. Now, you're bringing up a valid point, but sometimes a person will realize, like within a very short time, and then go back. Oh, I just dropped it. I must have dropped it right around here. Maybe. Okay. Now, the poskim say like this: if you see the guy looking for it, so then you find that obviously he isn't miyayish. But if you, I'm sorry. Yes, if you see if he is looking for it right here because he thinks that he just dropped it right away, so then you
I
can't.
drop something in the room, guy walks out of the room that drops it, another guy sees this thing, picks it up, he sees the guy coming who's looking for it, he puts it in his pocket, pretends like he never saw it.
Okay, that you're not allowed to do.
Why? Has no sin.
The reason is because you see, huh?
It's money, has no sin.
Because if he's coming back and he realizes that he dropped it a minute ago, he comes in, right?
If you claim it first.
So you're putting a time frame around it. You're
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
You're definitely saying that within a few moments.
Within a few moments, he's going to do. Now, so he, right.
He in his car and he went all the way home. He came back an hour later, and I was still here learning, and I was the one that picked it up.
No, so then
I would
no.
have to tell him.
The reason is because then he was already miyayish, and unless he says.
I was back, he says, did you happen to see $25 I dropped out of my pocket on the way out of the classroom? I said, I didn't see it.
Okay, so
When I answer him, I don't know.
Okay.
Don't answer anything because I don't want to lie. We don't want to get into lying. You get the I'm avoiding the question.
okay, so being at that point, I see. I'm not sure exactly how to define it, but at that point, there is such a thing as he wasn't miyayish yet, and there's another thing of that he's searching for straws, which means that he really was miyayish. He is saying, maybe I dropped it in the classroom, and it's hopeful that nobody took it by then.
But really, he doesn't know where it fell out.
But really, he doesn't know where, and realize he doesn't, and realize, and he's groping for straws at that
But
point.
again, if I know I know I found 25, can I ignore the fact that I found it?
Yes,
And I can feel that I didn't steal anything.
that's right. Okay, it would be maybe a
Most
midas,
people wouldn't do that.
a midas chasidus, perhaps,
I think
that
most
if.
people would probably just tell the guy, oh yeah, I found it here. You know,
Okay, yeah, it could be.
I think most people would do that, but I'm saying you're saying really at the end of the day you wouldn't have it.
Right. Okay. You're right. Correct. That's right. Halachically speaking, you're allowed to keep it. Okay. Now you asked me if a person walks out and realizes like 2 seconds later, and then he walks back in, and he knows I must have dropped it just now a minute ago.
Because I'm
Okay.
always checking my pocket.
You're right, and he realizes I must have. Right, and I must have. He realizes that it must have been in this room. Right. So then I believe that some of the poskim will tell you that, oh, 1 second, that that he wasn't miyayish because he can figure out where it was, but if he doesn't know where he dropped it, now he's just groping for straws. Now he's hoping against hope, right? Because the real truth is that if somebody else will take it, there's no way he can claim it because there's no identifying mark.
I lose everything. I many times thought I lost it in some place, and then it showed up somewhere else later on. But I was sure I lost it X, Y, Z, and it was just gone because someone must have taken it. Or
Oh, okay.
And then a day later it shows up somewhere else.
Okay, yeah, okay.
I'm saying, but I found it within my possession. But I'm saying, yeah, I was right.
Right.
Yeah-ish because I assumed it was there.
Exactly.
And I was wrong. It wasn't there. That's the grasping at straws thing.
Mm-hmm.
I was hopeful it was there. It really wasn't.
Okay, that happens. So far we've had 2 exceptions to the rule, right? Where even Abaye would admit that you can keep it because the assumption automatically is the guy knows, the guy realizes. Okay? Let's go to part 4. Yet another truth. Toshma. Ulashono shel argomon. Harei shalom. Literally, that means tongues of purple wool, which means just strips of purple wool. Those are, you're allowed to keep it. That's what the Mishnah said. Strips of purple wool. Okay, so those were just fabrics that were made, and for some reason, I don't know why, but they were produced in the forms of like strips. And if you find those, there are hundreds of them, there's no siman on it, and therefore you're allowed to keep it. That's what the Mishnah says. So again, the obvious question is, V'amai, this is already becoming like a refrain. V'amai, why is that? But he doesn't know that it fell from him. According to Abaye, that should not be true. You shouldn't be able to keep it. Answers the Gemara, Hasam Nami, There also, agav de chashivi, since that they are chashuv means that they are valuable, they're expensive apparently, mishmushe memashmesh behu, he will feel for them, he will feel in his pockets, uked de Rabbi Yitzchak, and like that of Rabbi Yitzchak. Aha! So the Gemara is now expanding. And the Gemara is saying that I've got another case which is similar to money. If I'm carrying something valuable, and it doesn't have to be terribly valuable, it's not like I'm carrying a thing of diamonds in my pocket, right? But it doesn't have to be terribly valuable. But if it is basically valuable, it's something that it's expensive enough that you care about, so then, mamash mashbuhu, then the person will feel for it. And if he feels for it, he'll figure out immediately or very quickly that he dropped it, and therefore the finder may keep it because, yes, he was miyayish. This is not yish alomidas, it's yish midas. Yish has already actively occurred because we can assume that the guy knows it. Therefore, if you find a grocery bag outside of 7 Mile Market and it's sitting on the floor in the parking lot and it's full of whatever, are you allowed to keep it? Answer, yes. You're allowed to keep it. Reason? Because the person probably realized that he dropped. It's, especially if it's something large, we can assume, based on the Gemara before, because it's yakiri. And if it's expensive, because most of the things are, right? Especially nowadays, right? If it's expensive, we also have a right to assume that the person will feel for it and will probably realize that. Now, does it happen that person, misses it? Yeah, it does happen. Sometimes a person doesn't realize it, left something in his cart, and then he drove home, and then he realized, hey, what happened to it? Right? That does happen, right? Because it occurs. So then, such a case, maybe you'll be lucky. And it has happened to me. It has happened to me that one time part of my shopping ended up, I got distracted with something or whatever it was, and I left part of it in the cart, and I drove home, and then I realized that, gee, I must not have taken that back, right? At that point, I was miyayish. I doubted that it would be there. But, just in case, I drove back, and sure enough, it was sitting there. So I was lucky. I lucked out. Halachically speaking, somebody wanted to take it, he could have.
Even though it's amongst Jews?
Yeah.
And you would assume that Jews are scrupulous and they would let it.
But there's no simon on it. There's nothing, right? I could claim it only because that I knew where my cart was. But if it was someplace else, how would I be able to know that was mine?
That combination of groceries and one or two
Yeah,
things.
right, and I knew where it was, and so I could identify it, but there's no way of somebody else. It's not really a simon.
Is this, so, are things in the lost and found when they, like, some of the schools will say, okay, there's a lost and found, you can come look through the lost and found, it's yours, you can claim it, but if it's not claimed by this time, then we consider it all hefker, right? The same thing with the courtrooms at a shul. I'm saying, but if things have people's names in them, it doesn't matter, there's no obligation upon the people that run the lost and found.
Okay, the story goes like this. If it has an identifying mark, such as a name, then the right thing behind the shul would be able to say, call up the people, right? But I believe that the halacha is, and you can ask, a Rav about this if you want to make sure. I believe the halacha is that it's not, the shul has the right to put up a sign and say, anything that's left here after a month is becomes automatically hefker. And the reason why they can do that, even though that it would be proper to call, right? The reason why they can do that is because that if you left your coat here and it's been sitting here for a month, chances are good that even though that it has a siman, right, you've already been miyash.
Could have been a seasonal change. The last cold day, then it got warmer.
Right, okay, could be. Or it could be that, some guest left a raincoat or something like that, or whatever it is, and now he's, he comes from New York and whatever, who knows where it is, right? Okay, that happens, right? We have a right to assume that. It would be proper if he has a name, it would be proper for the person who is administrating the lost and found to try to find its owner. But if it doesn't have a phone number, and it just has a name, it just says Joe Shmagegi on it, and there's no way, unless you happen to know who Joe Shmagegi is, right? How are you supposed to track him down?
It's an Arab book.
Well, if there's so then it becomes the question of, is the person who is in charge of the shul, is he mechuyev to go to that degree to try to do it? So, that certainly would be a proper thing to do, to try to look up in the Arab books and see if there's in. What happens if Joe Shmagegi isn't listed? Well, so then what am I supposed to do? Well, there's a siman on it. It does say Joe Shmagegi in it, right? It has, it's a coat and it has his name in it. So there is technically a siman, but what am I supposed to do with it? I can't do anything with it. I have no idea who Joe Shmagegi is. And I can't track him down. Am I supposed to look in every phone book in the country to try to find Joe Shmagegi? What am I supposed to do?
The industry practice that the shul should have a lost and found list.
No, so the answer is, I believe that the halacha is, it's based on, I think there are tshuvas about this. I believe that the halacha is that you have a right to assume that after X amount of time, that the person does not come back for his item. You have a right to assume that despite the siman, he probably gave up hope now. Now, it's not usher on your part because you didn't take it, right? It was sitting in the coat room for the last month. He left it, right? And by now, he for sure realizes that I'm missing my coat, and who knows where I left it. And okay, so if it's been sitting there for a month, then the halach is that you have a right to assume that he was miyash, despite the siman.
And the shul does not